Two holes above the left eye, neat, round, side by side. This is not where a stone lands when a man falls. A fall makes one wound ragged in a place chance chooses. This is two wounds from the same object, in almost exactly the same spot. Someone stood over him and struck, and then, while he was already down, already broken, struck again to be certain the work was finished. 430,000 years ago, in a cave in the hills of Spain, one human being killed another on purpose. This is the oldest murder we can prove, the first killing in the whole human record that we can hold in our hands and show, beyond reasonable doubt, was done on purpose. And yet the people who did it went on to do something stranger and far harder to understand. They carried the dead down into the deep earth, and they did not throw a single one of them away. Deep in the hills of northern Spain, beneath the long ridge of Atapuerca, there is a place the excavators named the Pit of Bones. Cima de los Huesos in the language of the country. You do not simply walk to it. You reach it by crawling on your belly through a maze of narrow cave passages, in a darkness so complete it swallows the light whole. And then, without warning, the floor drops away beneath you. A shaft plunges straight down into the rock, 13 meters, more than 40 feet. It is a chimney carved through the limestone, with no other way in and no other way out. And at the very bottom of it, packed hard into the ancient clay, lie the bones of the dead. Not one body, not two, at least 28 separate people. More than 6,500 fossil fragments have been lifted from that clay, more human remains than from any other site of its great age anywhere on Earth. Men and women, children and the old. Whole families, it seems, all gathered together at the bottom of a pit that has no natural entrance a living person could stroll through. This single cave has given up so many individuals that it has taught us more about the bodies and lives of this ancient human species than almost any other place in the world. In a very real sense, we know these long-dead people better than we know most of the living generations that came after them. How did they all come to be down there, in a place with no easy way in and no way at all back out? Animals fall into natural pits by accident, one at a time, over centuries. And when they do, their bones lie tumbled together with the bones of the predators that chased them, a random scatter of hunter and hunted. But down in the Cima, the picture is different, and the difference is everything. The human dead are concentrated, deliberate-looking, not mixed the way a slow accident would leave them. The leading reading, argued hard and not yet settled by everyone, is that these dead were brought here on purpose, carried through the crushing dark and lowered or let fall into the deep by their own people, 400,000 years ago. And the honest scientist admits the argument is not fully won. Some researchers think water or slow collapse could have moved the bodies here over long ages without any human hand. But the sheer number of them, the near absence of the animals you would expect from a natural death trap, the way the dead pile up in this one impossible place, all of it leans hard toward a deliberate act. The Cima looks less like an accident of geology and more like the oldest cemetery on Earth. These were not us, not Homo sapiens, not yet. They were Homo heidelbergensis, an older kind of human, ancestors of the Neanderthals, walking a branch of the family tree that also, much later and much further away, leads to you. Powerful people, thick-boned, broad through the brow, built for a harder world. They hunted big and dangerous game with wooden spears and shaped stone, and they endured cold that would kill a modern body left unprepared. We like to imagine such people as brutes, all instinct and no inner life. The bones themselves argue otherwise, and they argue hard. Study their skulls, and in particular study the tiny bones deep inside the ear, and something remarkable comes into focus. The little bones of their hearing are tuned to the very same band of frequencies that human speech lives in. Their ears were built to catch exactly the sounds that language is made of. Their throats and their hearing together suggest that these people could make and could understand the sounds of a spoken language. So sit with this before we go any further. These people could probably talk, they had voices, they named the things of their world. They warned each other of danger, argued over grievances, and grieved their dead out loud with sound. And when one of them died, they did not simply leave the body where it fell for the wolves and the ravens to scatter. They carried it down through passages so tight that a living person must crawl, in a darkness they could never fully hold back with fire, to a pit that swallowed the dead and gave nothing back. There is no food down there, no shelter, no warmth, no reason on earth to make that terrible journey, except the dead themselves. This is among the very oldest signs we have that death itself had begun to mean something to the human mind, that a body was not simply refused to be walked away from, that it had to be taken somewhere and put down with care. And notice who is down there, not just the strong and the useful. There are children. There are the old, and there are individuals whose bones show injury and illness, people who would have needed carrying and feeding in life. These were not people who discarded the weak. They kept them alive, and then when death came, they kept them still, carrying even the smallest and the frailest down into the same dark to lie among the rest. Now go back to one of them in particular. The one with the 2 holes in his skull. Scientists rebuilt his face from 52 separate fragments, fitting them back together piece by patient piece, like reassembling a shattered clay vessel. He was a young adult, and when the skull was finally whole again, the story it told was not accident. It was murder. Read the fractures the way the forensic scientists read them. 2 separate impacts, both above the left eye, both made by the same object striking twice. For a simple fall to produce that, the very same stone would have had to strike the very same head, in the very same place, on 2 separate occasions, a coincidence so unlikely it can be ruled out. The angle of the breaks, their shape, the fact of their doubling, everything points to a blow delivered face to face by another hand. This is not a story we have laid on top of the bones because it makes good drama. It is what the fractures themselves demand, read with the same careful methods a coroner would use on a body found today. The skull is, in the coldest and most literal sense, a piece of forensic evidence from a crime that is 430,000 years old. So imagine the moment as it must have been. Something between 2 people has gone badly wrong, and because these people could speak, the thing that went wrong almost certainly had words. There was an argument. A grievance, a rivalry, an old wound reopened, we will never know over what, but it is the oldest human quarrel we can point to and prove. Somewhere in that shouting, a line was crossed, then the first blow. He is hurt, reeling, his hand rising too late to his own brow, and the one who struck him does not stop there. The second blow lands above the eye again, in nearly the same place to finish what the first began. Multiple blows, the forensic scientists tell us, are the signature of a clear intention to kill. Not an accident, not a hunt gone wrong, not a fall from the rocks. A choice made by one person to end the life of another. In that single instant, 430,000 years ago, something entirely new enters the world. Not death. Death is as old as life itself, but the wrong kind of death. A death that a mind can look at and know should not have happened. And think about what has to already exist for that killing to happen at all. Not just anger, animals feel anger, but a grudge held over time. A sense of having been wronged, the ability to look at another person and decide that they specifically must not go on living. That is not the mind of a beast lashing out. That is a mind carrying a story about another mind and choosing to end it. The murder is terrible. It is also, in its dark way, deeply human. And here the story turns, and it turns hard against everything you expect. They killed him, and then they did not treat him as garbage. The very same band that produced his killer gathered up his body and carried it to the shaft, the same pit where all their dead were laid to rest. Think about the terrible tangle inside that group now. There is guilt among them, real and heavy, because someone standing here did this thing. There is grief, a young life, full of years it will never live, simply gone. There is unease, the raw new sense that a line has been crossed that can never be uncrossed. And there may be, flickering underneath it all, the very first spark of something we would recognize as justice, the feeling that a wrong has been done and cannot just be forgotten. But whatever storm they feel, look at what they do not do. They do not leave him behind. They take even a murdered kinsman through the crawl spaces in the dark with all the labor and danger that journey demands so that he can lie with the others. He does not get less than the rest because of the way he died. He is one of them still. And so he goes down into the deep with all the rest of them. There is no evidence that the killer was cast out or that the victim was denied his place. Whatever reckoning happened among the living, the dead man was still treated as kin. That tells us something about how these people held their group together, that belonging did not end at the moment of violence, that a person murdered was still, unbreakably, one of their own. This is the thing that ought to stop you where you stand. The capacity to kill a kinsman on purpose and the refusal to throw a kinsman away, these two things do not appear in the human story 100,000 years apart, one arriving only after we had grown wiser and gentler. They show up in the very same people, in the very same cave, at the very same moment in time. 400,000 years before the first written law, before the first temple, before the first word ever set down in clay, the murder and the burial were already two halves of a single human act. These people knew somehow that a death could be a wrong, and they knew at the very same time that even a wrong death still had to be honored. And then there is the axe. In the entire pit, 28 bodies, 6,500 fossil fragments, an ocean of bone, there is exactly one stone tool. One. In a place packed with the dead, a single crafted object. The excavators named it Excalibur, after the legendary sword drawn from the stone, because it is that singular, that set apart from everything around it. It is a large and beautifully worked hand axe of the Acheulean kind, shaped with care on both faces, symmetrical and fine. And it is made of red quartzite, a stone that does not come easily from these hills, a deep and unusual color that sets it apart from any ordinary tool. Here is what makes it truly uncanny. Study the blade under a microscope the way you would study any tool to learn its life's work, and you find no use wear at all. None. It never cut a hide, never scraped a bone, never butchered a kill, never did a single day of the work an axe is made for. It was never used. A perfect tool made by genuinely skilled hands and then apparently given to the pit of the dead and to nothing else. Why, we do not know, and honesty demands that we say so plainly and leave it said. Perhaps it fell in by pure chance and means nothing. But among many of the researchers who have spent their lives in this cave, the reading is this: it was placed, set down on purpose. An offering, something rare and beautiful, made to be seen and never used, deliberately let go into the dark to lie among the dead. If those researchers are right, this is the oldest symbolic act that human beings have ever left us. The first time a human hand gave up something precious for a reason you cannot eat, or wear, or wield, a reason that lives only inside the mind. The first offering. Or perhaps the first apology, given to a pit that could never, ever give anything back. Consider the cost of that gesture. A hand axe this fine took hours of skilled, patient work to make, and a good tool was survival itself in that hard world. To make one perfectly and then never use it, to carry it into the dark and let it go, is to give away something genuinely valuable for nothing you can hold. That is the moment a tool stops being only a tool. That is the moment an object begins to carry meaning. And it happens here in a pit of the dead, hundreds of thousands of years before we thought such a thing was possible. So look one last time at everything these people leave us. A murdered man struck twice above the eye, the oldest proof we have that human beings could kill one another on purpose, with intent, with a decision made behind the eyes. And that very same man carried through the dark and laid down with his people the proof that we could not, even then, bear simply to discard each other. The dark and the light in us are not separated by ages. This is the lesson the pit forces on you. They do not arrive in the human story 100,000 years apart, the shadow first and the light much later, once we had finally learned to be good. They are here together, right at the very beginning, in the same band, in the same cave, at the bottom of the same terrible pit. The capacity to strike a kinsman down, and the refusal to leave that same kinsman where he fell. The argument sharp with words, and the grief afterward that had no words at all. The wound above the eye, and the flawless red offering laid down into the same darkness. We did not become moral creatures by leaving our violence behind us somewhere in the deep past. That is the comforting story, and it is not true. We were violent and we were tender in the very same breath, in the very same cave, 430,000 years ago. The heart's light and the heart's shadow were born together in the same people at the same hour. They have never once, in all the time since, been truly apart. And everything we have built in all the years that followed, every law written against killing, every grave dug with tenderness, every argument between the worst of us and the best of us, is only the long, unfinished argument between those two things that were born together in the dark.